The old man died in a room reeking of sulfur and failed ambitions. But his son would not let the story end there. At the muddy graveside, 17-year-old Kazu stood apart. The mourners had already forgotten the fool who chased gold and found only lead.
The debt collector gave me 30 days. 30 days before they stripped the house bare and tossed my father's memory into the gutter.
Back in the alchemist's lair, the walls closing in with his loss, Kazu's boot found a heavy piece of his father's obsession.
Useless. All of it. Years of his life for a room full of gray bricks that couldn't buy a loaf of bread.
But as his anger ebbed, he stared at the brick in his hand. The dull metal caught the lamplight, and something shifted.
Every street in Birmingham is being laid with gas pipes. Every print shop needs type metal and lead. Lead is the cheapest, most malleable metal on the market.
The mountain of failure his father had left behind was not a ruin. It was a warehouse of opportunity.
Father, you spent your life trying to turn lead into gold, but you never saw that lead was already gold.
In that moment, the lead king was born, not from alchemy, but from the cold arithmetic of a desperate son. At the bank, Kazu's promissory note promised a fortune he didn't have, secured by lead bricks and a dead man's reputation.
They'll refuse. I can see it in his eyes. But if I walk out empty-handed, the house is gone in 30 days.
The banker scoffed at the proposal, calling it another alchemist's fantasy. The collateral was a slum workshop, not a factory.
Every gas lamp, every water pipe in Birmingham will be lead. I have the metal. I have the method. This is commerce, not alchemy.
He laid out his father's hidden notebooks, not the mystical symbols, but the precise tables of melting points and malleability.
He's still seeing the fool who chased gold. I have to make him see the supplier who cornered the market before anyone else realizes what's sitting in my workshop. Birmingham needs new water mains. I can deliver them at half the cost of iron. Back me, or your competitors will.
The banker's pen scratched a signature. Kazu walked out with enough capital for one small furnace, and a debt that would devour him if he failed. Months later, the furnace roared. Kazu poured his first sheet of pure lead, and it sold before it cooled. His lead became pipes, printing type, ammunition. The city's veins ran with his metal, and the alchemist's ruin transformed into an empire. Before the city council, Kazu unrolled blueprints of his lead pipe network. The vote was unanimous. Birmingham would flow through his metal.
They all shook my hand like I'd already saved the city, and I believe I will.
But in the crowded hospital ward, a young nurse named Elena saw a different pattern in her patients.
The children in the new housing blocks are all sick. Colic, seizures, palsy. It started when the lead pipes went in.
Lead is inert. It's been used since Rome. She's just a nurse seeing miasmas in the water.
I have 12 cases. All from streets with your water mains. Are you going to ignore this?
12 doesn't prove causation. It proves desperation. And I can't afford to be desperate.
He gave Elena a smile that didn't reach his eyes and excused himself to attend to more pressing matters.
I am building an empire, not a charity ward. Progress has a price. Father understood that.
The lead king had his first warning, and he buried it under a mountain of ambition. But the truth had already started leaking through. At the Grand Victoria Ball, Kazu stood among silk and silver, a self-made man in a room that still whispered of his father's failures.
They smile, but I can feel the pause before my name, the alchemist's son, playing at Merchant King.
Then Lord Blackwood materialized beside him, older, polished, with a smile that never reached his cold gray eyes.
Kazu, isn't it? I knew your father. We shared certain interests. He never did find what he was looking for, did he?
He's not being polite. He's marking territory. What does he know about the workshop?
Lead is a fascinating metal. So malleable. It can flow through a city, or it can poison it. Depends on whose hands it's in.
I'm a simple industrialist, my lord. I leave the poetry to the chemists.
Simple? Oh, I doubt that. Your father's library was quite extensive, I wonder what other inheritances you've unlocked.
He's got his claws in something. I came here to conquer society, and I'm already prey.
That night, the lead king understood. His throne was built on secrets, and someone was already sharpening a knife in the dark. The first coffin was so small. The gravediggers wept. Inside lay a 5-year-old who had drunk from Birmingham's new pipes.
The water test confirmed it. Lead, the same lead that runs through every new house. This was no fever.
Lead poisoning. The autopsy report will bury me before the inquest even starts.
That evening, behind a locked office door, the lead king wrote a check that reeked of hush money.
For your family's comfort. No need for an inquest. Tragedy. Plain and simple.
The father took the money. His hand was steady, but his eyes were dead. The silence was purchased.
Blood money. I know what you did. You paid them to forget their own child.
I paid for their comfort. The boy died of a summer fever. There is nothing to investigate. She'll never stop. And every word she speaks is the truth I am too much of a coward to face.
That night, the lead king paid for a child's funeral twice, once with coin, once with a piece of his soul. Elena didn't wait. She compiled case files, test results, and marched into his office with the weight of a dozen graves.
18 more children since the first. Paralysis, blindness, all traced back to your mains. Look at the numbers.
Correlation isn't proof. The city is filthy. There are a dozen causes of disease.
The water samples don't lie. High particulate lead. It's coming from your foundry's smelter residue.
She's right. I've seen the slag heaps glowing at night. But if I admit this, everything crumbles.
He refused to take the folder. So she left it on his desk, its weight heavier than any brick he'd ever lifted. That night, alone, he lit a lamp and opened the file. Medical diagrams, autopsy reports, water analyses.
Poison. It's poison. And I've been pouring it into every home.
He slammed the folder shut, but the images stayed. His father's dream had curdled into a nightmare. Morning found him still at his desk, the folder untouched yet devouring him. He had built an empire on a slow poison. Lord Blackwood's paid journalists struck. The morning headlines screamed of poison, corruption, and a city betrayed.
Is the lead king poisoning our children? He knows I can't trace this back to him, but every eye in Birmingham will be on me now.
He summoned the city's most influential editors, offering exclusive advertising contracts in exchange for a more sympathetic tone.
Let the rabble do our work. By the time he stops bleeding, his empire will be cheap enough to buy.
The words lit a fuse. In the cobbled squares, crowds gathered with torches and placards not for justice, but for blood.
They want a villain. I have to give them something else. A promise, a distraction.
He stood before the angry mob, not with a confession, but with a grand, hollow gesture.
Good people. These accusations are baseless slander by competitors who envy my affordable pipes. I will personally fund an inquiry to clear the air. Another bribe. Another lie. How long until the lies outlive the truth?
The crowd's anger dimmed to murmurs, but the lead king had only bought time. The clock was ticking faster, and Blackwood was winding it. Desperate for the truth, Kazu returned to the crumbling house where his father had died, seeking answers in the Alchemist's ruins.
If the lead is poisoned, Father must have known. He wrote everything down. There has to be a journal I missed.
Moonlight struck a loose brick. Behind it, a hidden compartment held a leather-bound journal, its pages thick with secrets.
A journal. He hid it behind the stone. Why keep it secret unless it held something terrible?
By candlelight, he opened the cover. The pages crawled with alchemical diagrams in his father's trembling hand. The transmutation was incomplete. The lead transformed, but not to gold. Something else awoke within the metal.
Awoke? What does he mean? Awoke. This isn't chemistry. It's something else.
Further lines spoke of a catalyst of life, a sacrifice required to perfect the work. The last entry was dated the week he died.
He did something. Not a failed experiment. A successful one. And the cost, was life.
The lead king closed the journal, his hands shaking. The mountain of lead had not been a failure, it was a tomb. Kazu returned to his office with a brick of the tainted lead, setting up a grim experiment using acid in a caged rat.
The journal said the transmutation awoke a property. If the lead is active, a biological test will prove it.
Within hours, the rat collapsed, convulsing with the same palsy Elena had described. The water bowl was now a death sentence.
It's not just the metal, it's the transmutation. Father didn't fail to make gold. He created a slow-acting poison.
Comparing the journal with his father's old notes, the truth became clear. The lead's very atomic structure had been permanently warped.
He described it as a curse of atomic memory. Every atom of lead remembers the failed transmutation and releases that corruption into water.
The realization hit him like a physical blow. Every sheet, every pipe, every bullet he had ever sold was a vessel for this curse.
Thousands of miles of piping, millions of gallons of water, entire neighborhoods. I've been pouring death into every home.
He tried to calculate the scale, the children, the poisoned mothers, the generations of lead-borne disease, and his mind simply stopped. The lead king sat motionless until dawn, trapped between the empire he had built and the poison it was built upon. Elena spotted him in the hospital corridor and strode toward him, fury and grief etched on her face.
2 more since yesterday. The youngest was 3. Every time you lie, a child dies.
Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed his arm and pulled him into the sick ward.
Look at them. Their gums are turning blue. Their brains are swelling. This is your legacy.
I know it's the lead. I just don't know how to stop it without destroying everything.
Later, on the rooftop, he finally broke his silence.
The lead isn't normal. My father did something to it. An alchemical process that made it permanently poisonous.
Then we warn the city. We replace the pipes.
If I admit this, Blackwood won't just take my fortune. He'll use the scandal to crush every reform I tried to build.
They stood in silence, bound by a secret neither could yet act upon. As the city below unknowingly drank poison, 3 days later, Lord Blackwood stood on a grand balcony, a sheaf of documents in his hand, and a sea of eager faces below.
Citizens of Birmingham, I have here incontrovertible proof. The lead king's pipes are not just faulty, they are cursed.
He read aloud the names of the dead children, each one a hammer blow against the silence Kazu had bought. The crowd's grief twisted into fury. Murderer, they roared, and the mob surged toward the lead king's main foundry. Torches sailed through the night, smashing into the yard where his fortune was forged. The furnaces still glowed as the gates caved in.
They're burning it all. The ledgers, the stock, the contracts. My whole legacy is turning to ash.
A group of workers, his own employees, were tearing down the lead pipes with their bare hands, their faces contorted with anger and fear.
Let the alchemist's son pay for his sins. Let his empire drown in the very poison it poured.
I wanted time. I wanted a plan. But Blackwood didn't give me either. Now the truth is out, and there's no hiding from it.
The lead king stood at the edge of his crumbling empire, and for the first time, he had no answer, no bribe, no lie, only the fire.
There's only one way out of this. Not a bribe, not a lie. The truth.
Through smoke and shattered glass, he walked into the heart of the mob. As he rose on the ruined platform, the mob fell silent. The lead king was about to speak.
I lied. I knew the pipes were poison, and I hid it behind money and influence. My father's alchemy turned lead into death, and I sold it to you. I won't ask for forgiveness. I will replace every pipe, every fitting, every ounce of this cursed metal at my own cost.
The crowd stirred, anger warring with disbelief. Replacing the city's plumbing would cost a fortune.
I will sell everything I own. My wealth was built on your suffering. Now let it heal you.
A voice shouted, "Prove it." Then another, "Let him try." Fury softened into wary hope. He stepped down from the platform, a ruined man choosing decency over dynasty. The work was just beginning. Within days, The auctioneer's hammer fell on his mansion, his factories, his fine art. The lead king's empire was liquidated to pennies.
Every chair, every ledger, every brick of that cursed metal. Gone. And it still won't bring back a single child.
In a rented hall, Elena set up a free clinic, treating the poisoned with tonics and truth. Kazu stood at her side, a penitent.
The anti-lead regimen is helping, but dozens more arrive every day. The damage is deep. Kazu.
Then we treat as many as we can. I'll work until there's no more poison to pump.
He joined the laborers in the streets, wrenching out his own pipes with hands that grew raw and calloused.
My hands ache. A metallic taste won't leave my mouth. Is this the same poison?
A clinic doctor pulled him aside, his face grim. Years of exposure had taken their toll. Kazu's own blood tested high for lead.
The very sword I swung has been poisoning me all along. I'll carry this until the day I die.
The miles of pipes still to be torn out seemed endless, but he kept working, day after day, his body paying what his conscience owed. The House of Commons committee summoned him to explain how a city was poisoned.
They want me to blame my father, the alchemy. But I was the one who sold it.
The indictment listed 47 counts of criminal negligence, each a child's name.
I have no defense. I knew the pipes were leaching poison, and I did nothing to stop it.
He detailed the bribes, the cover-up, the false inquiry. The gallery gasped. In the Old Bailey, the judge looked down with a face of stone. The sentence was 5 years, reduced to 2 for his cooperation and restitution.
2 years. I'll be free before the last pipe is replaced. That's more mercy than I deserve.
He accepted the verdict without flinching. The courtroom was silent as the bailiff led him away. He did not look back at the gallery filled with the families he had wronged. Alone in a cold stone cell, the weight of verdict lifted, Kazu opened his father's journal one last time.
The final pages. I've been circling them for weeks. What more can a dead man say to his condemned son?
My son, if you read this, know I did not fail. The lead was a test, not a treasure. I left it to you, believing you would choose the right path. A memory surged. Sunlight in the old workshop, his father's gentle hand on his shoulder, teaching him the miracle of chemistry.
He knew the lead was tainted. Every ounce. He left it there for me to discover, or to profit from.
You turned lead into a lesson. You are the true alchemist.
I failed the test for years, but he still believed I'd find my way. I forgive you, Father, and I finally understand.
He closed the book, its weight now a comfort, not a curse. The alchemical secret was a father's love. The lead had poisoned a city, but in the cell, the lead king found the transmutation he'd been chasing. Forgiveness. As Kazu's cell door clanged shut, Lord Blackwood moved into the vacuum, buying the lead king's remaining foundries for pennies. He melted the tainted stock and sold it as new piping, spreading the poison to villages that had never heard of Birmingham.
That fool Kazu took the blame. By the time they realize the lead still kills, I'll have sold every ounce and vanished to the continent.
But the new outbreaks traced back to his mills. Elena's meticulous records linked the deaths to Blackwood's supply. Scotland Yard came for him at his gentleman's club. The clink of teacups replaced by the snap of iron shackles. The morning headlines screamed, Blackwood convicted, Lead King exonerated. The city that had demanded Kazu's blood now spilled it for him. In the court of public opinion, Kazu was recast as a tragic figure, seduced by profit, but ultimately true to his conscience. Blackwood's trial was swift. His own ledgers, filled with bribes and fraudulent contracts, hung him higher than any noose. He was sentenced to a lifetime of hard labor, every day a reminder that his scheme had turned the very people against him. The lead king's name was cleared, but the true victory lay in the clean water now flowing through Birmingham's new iron pipes. 2 years passed. The man who walked through the prison gate was thinner, grayer, but his eyes held a quiet clarity.
The air tastes different. Or maybe it's just that I am seeing the world without the weight of gold.
He went straight to the graveyard. The grass had grown thick over his father's grave, but the headstone was clean. From his pocket, he drew a small gold nugget, a tiny symbol of the dream his father had chased into ruin.
You wanted gold, Father. Here is a piece of your dream. But the real treasure was the lesson you hid in the lead.
The city dedicated the new waterworks that week, a public fountain flowing with clean, lead-free water.
That fountain is my real monument. Not the Lead King, but the man who tore his kingdom down.
He watched from the crowd, no longer the Lead King, just Kazu. A quiet smile touched his lips. The old pipes were gone, replaced by clean iron. The poison had been cut out. Like a cancer, he was poor, still sickening from the lead in his blood. But he was, at last, free. Decades slipped through Birmingham like clean water. The Lead King became an old man who walked with a cane, not a crown.
The fountain sparkles now. No parents flinch when their children drink. That is the only monument I ever needed.
He paused at the edge of the square, watching a boy cup his hands under the stream and drink without fear.
That simple act, a child drinking safely, cost me an empire. And I would pay it again.
He continued his walk, past the old foundry site, now a public garden where flowers bloomed over buried slag.
The poison is gone, but the lesson runs deeper than any pipe. It runs in the blood of the city.
He found a bench and settled into the warmth of the afternoon sun, the ache in his bones a familiar companion.
Lead was always worth more than gold, but only when you learned how to spend it.
He meant not the fortune he had made, but the fortune he had spent to undo it. The old man closed his eyes, and for a moment, the sound of children laughing was the only currency that mattered. Evening found the old man in his modest parlor, firelight dancing on the single shelf of books. On the mantel, beside a faded photograph, rested the last piece of his father's obsession.
A paperweight. That's all it is now. A dull gray reminder of a kingdom I tore down.
He lifted the brick, its weight familiar, and turned it in his wrinkled hands.
Funny. This piece of lead once bought and sold a city. Now it can't even buy a loaf of bread. But it bought something better.
The fire crackled, casting long shadows. But his own shadow had been the longest he ever cast. He set the lead back on the mantel, a relic of a past that had poisoned and then purified. And in that quiet room, the Lead King understood the true transmutation. He had turned his father's failure into a fortune, and that fortune into a lesson. In the end, lead had become something far more precious than gold. They called him the Lead King. But the throne he left behind was made of something stronger than metal. The fire fed on its last ember, and the room settled into a deep, quiet gloom. On the mantel, the lump of lead caught a final flicker, glowing faintly before the dark swallowed it whole. The old man's breathing slowed, his hand resting open in his lap, still at last. The clock on the wall ticked once, then fell silent, as if time itself knew the work was finished. The window showed a sliver of moon, a pale witness to the end of a long, heavy story. The last coal crumbled to ash, and the room surrendered to the night. There was no grand exit, no final word, only the peace that comes after a storm has passed. The image held on the dark mantel, the lead piece just a silhouette against the deeper black. Then the screen went to black, and the air was still. No sound, no image, only the echo of a lesson learned. And so the Lead King passed from this world, not with a crown, but with a clear conscience. His name was etched not in gold, but in the clean water that flowed through Birmingham's veins. Years later, the children who played in the fountain knew nothing of the poison that once ran beneath their feet. They only knew the joy of a hot summer day, the cool splash on their faces. That joy was his real monument. In a quiet parlor, a piece of lead remained on the mantel, gathering dust and memories. It was no longer a curse, no longer a fortune. It was a lesson, frozen in time, a reminder that the greatest wealth is not what you amass, but what you are willing to sacrifice. The Lead King had turned his father's failure into a city's redemption, and his own ruin into a legacy. Lead was always worth more than gold when you knew how to spend it. In the end, the lead brick sat on the mantel, silent and heavy, a paperweight for a conscience. It had once promised gold, but delivered poison. Yet in the hands of its true alchemist, it became redemption. The lead king had learned that the greatest wealth is not what you amass, but what you are willing to sacrifice. And so, while his name faded from ledgers, it lived on in the laughter of children and the purity of water. For lead is a humble metal, heavy and dull, but in the right hands, it can carry the weight of a new world. The throne he left behind was not of metal, but of memory, built brick by brick from his own broken heart. And in the deep silence of that room, the dust danced in the sunbeam, and the story was finally at rest. The lead king was gone, but his lesson remained, forged not in fire, but in the cool, clean water of a better day. Lead was always worth more than gold. The end.